Good evening. I'm calling this Monday, February 24th work session to order. The first thing I'm looking for is a motion to adopt the agenda.
I make a motion.
Is there a second?
I second.
Is there any discussion? I call. Yes.
Yes.
I call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All righty. The next thing is I'm looking for a motion to move into closed session. Reasons being to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this body has jurisdiction, or any other personal matter that affects one or more specific individuals. And the reason for that is the public discussion of applicants and employee names and personnel information could discourage people from working on the board and contain sensitive personal and biographical information. Personnel information is protected from disclosure under the MPIA. The second topic is discussion of ongoing negotiations with Kent County Public Schools bargaining units. The reason for going into closed session is to maintain the integrity of the collective bargaining process. And finally, topic is administrative function regarding board communications. The reason for the substance of discussion is considered administrative function outside the scope of the Open Meetings Act, but is discussed during an otherwise closed session pursuant to Rule 3-104. So I'm looking for a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make that motion to go into closed session.
All righty. Is
I'll
there?
second it.
Who seconded?
Yes.
Oh, Ms. Dorsey. All righty. I call for the vote. Is there any other discussion? Questions? I call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Vote is unanimous. We will be back at 5:30. Thank you. to our open session. Kent County Board of Education met in closed session from 5 o'clock to about 5:40 to discuss personnel, collective bargaining. Mr. Hushin, their Director of Human Resources, was in there for most of the meeting. That was all, just the board. We took no action. Any action we'll take will be done publicly. All righty. Ms. Swanson, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? I call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously, Ms. Manley. All righty, Dr. McComas, take it away.
Okay, great. If I could get Mr. Ford, there you go. If we could pull up our slides. So again, welcome to our budget work session this evening. The overall intent of this evening's session is to provide the board and the public an overview of the specific requests and needs of our school system, along with a framework for thinking through our budget priorities. And then at the end, we'll just have a general question and answer session for the board members to begin thinking through their priorities, which we will identify in our next meeting. So if I could move forward here. Oh, thank you. Next slide, please. That would be me. We know, as we said before, you're going to see this introductions aligns with what we said last time. We knew in August when the state announced that they were making budget cuts, we as a community were already deeply organizing and engaging in clarifying what our community priorities were through our community conversations with lots of different stakeholders. And we recognize that our fundamental goal as a board here is to use our taxpayer dollars wisely to educate our students. And that, of course, we want that education to be excellent for them to create lifelong success personally and professionally. And ultimately, it is about leveraging our funds to accelerate our achievement, because we recognize that while we are beginning to see promising results based on some of the changes that we've made, that we have a good marathon to run ahead of us. So how do we use this budget process to help accelerate achievement? And ultimately, we're going to have a very lean and focused budget for FY26. So again, tonight we're going to first look at what is it, our leaders, our principal requests are first on our spreadsheet, and then you'll see our requests from the other departments that administer the entire organization. Second, we're going to talk about a theory of action to help us organize our priorities. And then lastly, we'll kind of answer Q&A for our board members to support them in their thinking and discerning process. So what exactly have our leaders requested? And so for the public, you see just the image of the spreadsheet the board members have in front of them, and it was posted publicly. We updated today to color code it to just make it easier for everybody to look at. So if our board members, if you look at the spreadsheet, just quickly by color coding, if you see the lines in the spreadsheet that are green, they are new requests, meaning they are things that we don't currently have in place, or in some instances, and often it's noted, it may be something that we have been funding through a grant for the last couple years, and the grant is gone away, and now we are requesting it to become part of our normal sustaining budget. What you see at the top, the first one, RAGS, stands for Rock Hall Elementary. You see what their principal requested, one additional elementary teacher for next year. And then you'll see Garnett Elementary. They have requested an additional full-time English learner teacher, bilingual instructional assistant, pre-K and K teacher. And then vestibule receptionist personnel, assistance for special education, an elevator to help. We have a student there in a wheelchair and to help bring us into ADA compliance.
But we did get a chair lift, right?
We did get a chair lift. using medical assistance funds. And cafeteria tables, OG materials, professional development training, teacher specialist, and an INT assistant, infants and toddlers assistants, for those who aren't familiar with the acronym. And then Galena Elementary, first and third grades are anticipated to be large next year based on enrollment projections. In those classes right now, they're teetering above our preferred class size, but not so large enough that in this moment right now we need to expand. But that's something for us to consider between now and our next board meeting. They're also requesting a full-time kindergarten assistant and an instructional coach. The teacher specialist role you see there is something that we currently are funding through grant. And so we're looking at how we can accommodate that. School furniture, elementary school, one elementary school teacher, full-time world language teacher. Sorry, I've moved into the middle school requirements or request. A full-time health for our unified arts. So at the middle school, we are looking to try to create a more robust offering for our middle school students in their unified arts time. One, to support their engagement and to help really the overall quality of our program. You know, when you get so lean, sometimes you end up not offering as much robust programming as you want, you know, for kids, and world language is an area we could grow in. And then, and I'm not going to go through this entire spreadsheet tonight, so fear not, but I did want to make sure that I highlight what our principals were asking for. As I understand, that's really our custom here in Kent County.
Can I ask
Sure.
a question?
Mm-hmm.
The things that are highlighted in green, is this a wish list or what they think they need or do need?
Yes, to both, right? So we wish we could get the things we believe we need. So, and this is where, you know, we're being in full transparency here. These are the things that we would like to ask for. Now, I will say I have talked to all of our leaders in the organization, and this is the way I think about budgets. While our funding is 12-month, our budget thinking needs to be multi-year, right?
Yes.
So as I have explained, and I asked our principals to not think in a deficit model. Don't tell me what you can do without. Tell me what you need to do excellence for our children, right?
I like that.
And so, but we also acknowledge that we're not going to get everything in 1 year. It might take 2, 3, 4, 5 years to build out the program that we believe delivers an excellent experience and excellent academic results, right? And so I told our leaders not to hold back in their request, right? But to build the vision of where we need to go, knowing that we're not going to get everything we ask, right? That's not life,
Right.
not in one swoop. But to not even put it on the table is to shortchange our children and our community in the long run, if we're not being honest about what we need to be excellent. Because at some point, you're so lean that you do get diminishing returns,
Yeah.
right? And so just kind of jumping back, I'm just going to hit again, I'll stop where the principal requests are. Let's see, where did I stop off? The middle school with the full-time health teacher as part of our unified arts rotation. Additional days for our school counselors in the summertime. There's a lot of scheduling, school counseling work that goes on in the summertime to support, and we would like to give them some additional days than over what they already have. They're asking for an additional 10-month administrator. You'll see here the Title I funds reallocation. Again, Title I is not really part of the operating budget. Student support specialist, we do have a person, but that's currently funded on a grant for 1 more year. So that's not something we need to consider for this grant or this budget cycle, but just again, so that you also are thinking, you know, how do we accomplish what we need to do over several cycles of the budget process. So we'll know next year we're going to need to be thinking about how do we sustain that student support specialist.
Question, in
Yes.
this column, FTE, what does that stand for?
I always say full-time employee, but Ms. Stewart, or Mr. Husham, what's the proper?
Full-time equivalent.
Full-time equivalent. So when it says 1, that's like 1 full-time person.
Understood.
Mhm. And then you may see like a 0.5 would be
Yeah.
a half-time.
All right.
Okay, moving into the high school, they would like an academic dean of discipline and instruction to support being able to get into classrooms and do more instructional coaching. Likewise, you see the next thing down, instructional support specialist. A lot of our schools lost the, and Mr. Hushin helped me with the title, was it student support?
So we, through the LEAD grant, we had student support coaches, which were part-time, but then each building had building-based instructional coaches too.
Thank you.
Each elementary school had one, and then our middle school and high school had two.
So that's where you see our principals recognize the resources they had as a function of the grant, but then the grant went away. And so our principals are trying to reinstitute that structure that was really helping us move forward. But you know, this is the challenge when you use grants. Yes, sir.
So are we having issues out of the high school with discipline, or, I mean, is this?
No, there's not issues, but this is what I will tell you as a school administrator, high school administrator, right? Is your day can be bogged down in little discipline things, right? Like two people having, you know, a disagreement that doesn't lead to a fight, but they're just having a disagreement. You get bogged down in that, which means if you're handling that, what you're not handling is being in classrooms, looking at the rigor of instruction and coaching teachers to make sure that our kids are being challenged, right? And so it's school administration, especially at the secondary, whether that's middle or high, can always use an extra set of hands to handle low-level discipline things because, again, if you're sitting there doing a mediation with students to work through a issue, that needs to happen, right? Because you want to prevent it from escalating, but that also means they're not they're not driving instruction. Or sitting there looking at data in a PLC with teachers. I don't mean to put my back to you. So there's a trade-off there, right? And so they're always just, you know, whether it's the middle school, like, look, the middle school is basically asking for the same thing. They ask for it, though, in the form of an additional assistant principal. The high school asked for it in the sense of a dean, right?
I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
That's a
it
lot-
is.
That's a lot of money.
Right. And again, we know we don't get everything we ask for, but I ask people to tell me what they need to build excellence in our school system.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Was there only one request from Rock Hall?
Yes.
Okay.
It was just only the one request from Rock Hall.
They're perfect.
And then the high school, let's see, Director of Student Services Support, a full-time music and fine arts teacher, an additional full-time ESOL teacher. And then they are also asking to expand the athletics and extracurricular budget, a new volleyball net system. We actually have been in the process this year of trying to find some funds to take care of that so that it doesn't have to become a budget item for next year. So we're in the process of looking for resources for that. Aeration of the field hockey fields. A new mower that we need to help maintain our fields. We've been lucky, our county partners, is it Parks and Rec, has been helping us out with that, for which we're grateful for their partnership. And then moving down, you see support for academic programs, funding for SAT, PSAT, AP exams, dual enrollment opportunities, professional development for our teachers in alignment with state requirements, infrastructure and maintenance, collaborating. This is like a co-request between operations and the school to address ongoing needs including equipment, facility upgrades, such as water filling stations for students. Additional, you see there, additional support, smart technology, student safety programs, funding for preventative programs, professional development for our math teachers. And this is an area that, again, when we think about our priorities later on, we will be revisiting our data, right? Because we want to make decisions anchored in our data. Supplemental instructional support, algebra, boot camp, summer programs to support with math achievement, family and community engagement, workshops for parents, particularly for parents supporting them around math instruction and resources, and then assessment tools to pinpoint exactly in algebra where our students have deficit skills. And then what you see below that is the different central teams are requesting, they have requests as well. So the things that you see in green are the additional requests, and that's either we don't currently have it or we have it, but we need to expand the amount of money we allocate to keep it going. Where you see the white lines, which you see as you move further on, these are programs that we already have and what it costs to keep them going and moving forward. So again, I don't want to belabor the point of going through this because I think the point is to introduce it to you, to give you a framework of what you're looking at, and then for you to have time between now and the next budget meeting to look through those things. And of course, as you have questions, you can reach out to me because I can tell you, like, for example, one of the intervention programs, like if you look, Lexia Learning, what is Lexia Learning and what does that do for us and how do we know that we're getting a return on investment on that? I can answer those questions more, I think, in-depthly with you one-on-one as you have particular questions. So I don't want to make this a tedious process for everybody, but I wanted to orient you to what you have in front of you, and then give you time between now and the next meeting to ask additional questions in depth and to process it. Yes, sir?
So is this something, since we're about to come on reviewing the annual budget, this is something I should be looking at and saying, I could possibly say we need this, or fight for this, or say yes to this, or maybe not this. These individual itemized items, I need to go through and say yes or nay, kind of to myself.
Well, what
Is that
I
we're
would,
doing?
what I would offer is the things in green is what I would ask you to focus on, because the things in white are things that we're already doing.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be transparent. I wanted to show you what we have in place, right? As opposed to just say, well, these are the add-ons that we want. I want you to see, what we are investing in, how much that costs to just sustain it. Because what we do know, we talked about this last meeting, and I have it as the closing slide again. We know at a minimum, we have $3 million less next year to do everything we're
Is
doing.
that because of the enrollment?
Yes,
Okay.
that's a function of our enrollment. So our enrollment has gone down, so we have $3 million less to do better, right? We need to do better than we did last year. And next year, we need to do better than we do this year, right? So we know we need to keep pushing forward, but with less resource. So that is not uncommon in public education. So I would offer, focus on the items that we've highlighted in green to say, are they things that you think that we can enhance or add to, right? The things that are in white are the things that we are doing. And I have in my process with our team, as we've talked about these things, I have interrogated, is this worth us keeping, right? So I have already done some of that interrogation.
Prioritize
All right.
the needs.
Mhm.
All right.
Yes, sir.
So I have a few questions. Number one, where does the blueprint come into play for this? Because this is a lot of money.
Yeah.
We're $3 million less this year than last year. Mr. Porter, maybe you can fill us in, but I'd like to know, we're getting, how much money will we get from Blueprint depending on what
Yeah.
the commissioners want? There are a lot of questions here. I'd just like to know.
Sure.
Maybe
Yeah.
Mr. Porter.
So in terms of revenue, no, I can answer that, and if I need it, I'll tag my lifeline in. I'm going to fast forward, but then I'm going to replay, right? So if we go all the way to the last slide, which is the same slides that I showed you last year, here's our revenue, and here's how it's broken down by the blueprint categories. So to directly answer your question, Mr. Rhodes, you'll see on this slide exactly what is coming where it says state share. That's money coming directly from the state in each of those blueprint categories. Okay? And this is on the website, so I can print it out for you before you leave if you want.
I understand, but the money that they're asking, all these wants that they want, is that included in this at all, or is this all extra?
Yes, so this is aligned, the things that we will prioritize and pick will align to our mission and our categories here. So, for example, let's take CTE. That's always an easy one, and since we have Mr. Poor in the room. If you flip through to the next to last, I don't know, what is that, the fourth page? 2, 3, 4. If you flip to the fourth page, you're going to see down the bottom where it says CTE on the left. Yep.
Oh, okay, I see that. All right.
Okay, so you'll see here, these are things that support our CTE program, and of course, we know CTE and industry credentialing is part of our vision around providing students career pathways to become career credentialed. So you'll see some of the things that we need support on for the CTE program is a culinary floor replacement, right? So that lines up with our blueprint goal around college and career readiness. Carpentry floor epoxy, our ag science greenhouse needs support, our automotive tech garage door replacement needs to happen. Trying to think. So my point being, the things that we choose into the budget will align with their vision of the blueprint. I thought your question was, is the blueprint sending us any money to do some of these things? And this is where the revenue comes in.
So, and the blueprint goes along with the county commissioners if they fund the blueprint, correct?
What you'll see, yeah, if you see up here, you'll see what's called the local share. So under the blueprint legislation, that's what the local share, how much our local county provides to us for the next year's budget, and you'll see the state share.
Because I'm looking at this in a whole, I mean, we want to get money for a new school, you're losing money, I mean, and the state of Maryland is out of money, I mean, there's going to be a lot of problems this year, and I just, you know, I know you were over there trying to raise money, we want to get as much as we can, but this is going to be challenging.
Well, there's no doubt, I mean, yeah.
I mean, and to be honest with you, I'm not to talk to you, but I don't really totally understand all this.
Well, we can take time
Yeah.
and talk one-on-one around. It
Okay.
is a lot to pull together, so I just want to acknowledge it is a lot.
Can I
Yes.
ask a question? So, the money we're anticipating getting from the state, I know, I'm just thinking about the May Legislative Committee meeting that we had today, and I know that you went to Annapolis last week to address the proposed cuts to the education budget, which would cut into the foundational funding. So that's basically the core of what we use to provide to support our students. So if that gets cut, the burden, that's a greater burden on us,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know you're against it, and I got the feeling today that MABE was against it too, and that they would fight for it, but I
Right.
don't know what's
We-
going to happen.
Correct. I mean, we won't know until we know.
Right.
And I think that's why, as we build our budget, which is why we're here talking about our priorities, right? We have to, in that order of operations, determine what is our non-negotiable? What is we'd like to have, you know, what I did ask our team, and I'm being very transparent, right, with everyone, these are the things that we know over time we need to build an excellent experience for our students and to drive increased results, right? Lots of times people want to say, you can do more with less. And there is a moment in time at which you do less with less, right? And I would argue that some of the investments that we have made because of grant funding is beginning to yield outcomes. And so now is not the time to take your foot off of that gas, right? Because we're beginning to see the improvements. And we can look at our data on that and talk about some of the specific initiatives. So certainly, again.
Well, one of the I mean, I know in the past, and just because we've done it in the past doesn't mean it's the way to do it again. I totally get that. And everything's unknown, but you just recently shared with us, 89% of our budget is in our people. So that's non-negotiable. We have to have people. So there's that big chunk, and it's going to not leave a whole lot left. With that, I mean, it's like we kind of have to build around what we've got left.
Correct.
Okay? Yeah.
Correct. And what I would offer, you know, look, I could sit here and come forward and say, these are the 5 things we're actually going to do, and then not engage you in every step of the process. But I want to honor that we respect and value transparency. I want to give it all to you so that you're looking at what I'm looking at tonight and into the next session. I will hear what are your thoughts, right? What matters to you? And then I will go back and I will ultimately, in my proposed budget, bring forward and say, here are the things that we're going to ask for this cycle. But I will also say, like, you know, for example, I don't know, I'll just pick, I don't know, something. Let's say full-time world language teacher at the middle school. Maybe we can't fund that next year, but maybe we anticipate funding that 2 years from now, right? Because 2 years from now, we will be under construction. Construction will generate interest in our middle school. Enrollment typically starts to go up when new buildings are constructed, so our enrollment may be going up at that point as a function of a new building coming in. Maybe we expect in 24 or 36 months, we might have enough resource at the middle school to fund that then.
Well, is
right?
there
So-
anything that we can be doing now that, in addition to thinking that's the way, but financially, is there any way, I don't want to say squirrel away some money, but is there any way that we can actually put dollars and cents to something we anticipate is going to happen 2 years from now?
Well, no, in that our budgets don't operate the way your home budget operates, right? In the way that you can put away, you know, $10 every paycheck and just watch that grow and know in 5 years I'm going to have X amount of dollars. Our budgets don't operate, you know, our, if you will, our cushion ends up being our fund balance
Right.
and.
Which we've unfortunately used
yeah.
the last couple of years to help balance the budget.
Right, right. And the other thing that oftentimes I think I have learned over time is, you know, we may use the word savings, right? Like we'll say, oh, well, we incurred some savings. It's really cost avoidance, right? So maybe I thought purchasing a class set of textbooks would be $500 and maybe it came in at $425, right? So I had $75 that we saved. Well, you didn't really save it. You just avoided spending that $75, right? So I just offer that for, I know it took me a while to begin thinking about public funds and that cost avoidance as opposed to, as a person, I think of savings, right? Like I'm going to put something away that I can go get later on. Yes.
Okay, so in regards to the new school, there's a couple counties in Maryland that fund the entire school. So how are we approaching that? Because we're the smallest school system. How do we approach some of these bigger counties to get all this funding? We should be able to get the same. Who's working on that?
We're trying to get the legislation changed. That's the
Sure.
only way that's going to change.
I
Yeah.
understand that, but
Yeah.
some of these counties get free schools, they
Well-
have more money.
Well, what I think I want to clarify a little bit, because I have worked in a large school system where the locals forward fund it. And so what would happen is the local county government would pay for the school construction process to get it up and moving, and then they would get their state reimbursement after the fact, right? So just to be clear, they're not just paying it all out, they're just putting the money up front and then knowing that the state share is going to come in later, is what my experience was in one of the larger school systems. Now, our challenge is our economy of scale. We have a small population, and so that is our fundamental challenge here, is that we have a small economy of scale. And so when you have a more dense population, you can spread the cost out over more people more quickly, right? So that's our fundamental challenge. And not that I don't want to talk about the middle school, but I want everyone to keep in mind, the middle school is capital funding. This is our operating funding, right? And
But all
with
this
the-
money-
Right, at the end of the day, it's all taxpayer, it all comes out of the taxpayer bucket, I agree.
But I look at this as the day-to-day operation to run our school system.
Yes, this is like the people and the things. Go ahead, Sam.
Does our website offer any, and just have to forgive me just because I'm still learning to navigate.
Sure.
As far as a breakdown of percentages of our student body, like students on IEPs and our multilingual learners, just to understand
Yeah.
percentages and.
Yeah, I don't believe our website has our demographics, but I can work with our communications team to get some just standard demographic information up there.
Yeah, it would be helpful, and comparing to, when I think about who needs the most support academically, and like to be able, when you think about making decisions about, demographics
Yeah.
and academic need and
Yeah.
such, so that would be helpful.
On that, I think it's a great segue to go back and look at our data, right? So, because that's essentially, again, we need to make wise decisions anchored in our students, right? So before we look at our data, though, I also want to offer another piece to your thinking, right? Is that ultimately, how do we use our dollars, right, to drive achievement? Because we know that's one of our major jobs as a board here. And so I will offer a theory of action that I proffer is how we drive our student achievement. So a theory of action is this sort of, if we do that, then we will get this result, right? So in that thinking, if we as a school system, and forgive me, I use the KCPS just for the economy, the slides. If we choose to fully invest in robust and rigorous literacy and math instruction, which we have already begun that investment, and we have that applied in an unparalleled STEAM experience for our students pre-K to 12. STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, for anyone who's not familiar with that acronym. And so you can see that is a wide variety of pathways for our students. Then when they graduate, they will be prepared to be competitive to pursue 21st century careers. Now, for some of them to pursue those careers, they need to go into additional education to four-year colleges. For other students, they will be prepared to pursue those careers immediately upon graduation because they have an industry credential through our CTE programs, or they may be going into military service directly as a career, and just about everything you do in the military is a STEAM-related experience. So I offer that if we take that as our driving focus, then follows some specific investments. Do you have a question, or you want me to keep going?
I think you're going to answer it in the slides with the data, so I'm going to let you keep going.
Okay, thanks. And so how does that look, right? So here again, if we already have many STEAM components in place across our grade levels, but do we have them pulled together in clear pathways so that they're not sort of, the elementary schools are sort of doing their own thing, and then the middle and the high school, we know our middle school has our STEM program, but how do we make sure that we're pulling and optimizing what we have and investing in what we have to make it strong across the grade levels? We have already begun, thanks to the many grants that came in a number of years ago to help support systems. We've invested in Orton Gillingham as part of our core approach to instructing literacy. Last year was our first year of really full implementation. We know it takes about 3 years for teacher practice to really habituate to new approaches, but we've already begun to see significant data changes as a result. Illustrative math, last year was the first full year of implementation across all the grade levels, and that is a very different approach to teaching mathematics. Just today, I'll share that I was in 6th and 8th grade math classrooms today looking at the implementation of that program to examine, the fidelity and integrity of implementation, as we're also looking at our data around that. So, I am doing that return on investment analysis as we go, and pressing on making sure that we're implementing these things as the research demonstrates, and a multi-tiered system of support. So that's, addressing student need, right? If Mary is struggling, what are we doing about Mary, right? How are we making sure that she doesn't lose class time and she gets that extra intervention that she needs, right? So that she can catch up faster, right? Or likewise, if you're, Miss McKenzie here is a gifted and talented student. How are we making sure that she's not bored out of her mind and that we're pushing her, right? So when you see MTSS or multi-tiered systems of support, that is really about addressing those unique differences in students, and really focusing on that across the board, but particularly at the middle school levels where those gaps start to get bigger and bigger, and then students aren't prepared to enter high school ready. If we focus on those things to really drive superior performance, then as students enter 9th grade, they are ready for high school, right? Which, if that's the case, then they knock out those fundamental requirements in 9th and 10th grade. And the 11th and 12th grade experiences are more authentic, meaning they're in workplace environments through apprenticeships. They're in dual enrollment experiences, seeing what it's like to be working at the college rigor level, to be in college environments, to see how that experience goes. That's sort of this vision that 17, 18-year-olds really thrive and need to be in authentic career environments so that they mature and they see how to conduct themselves and they see what the professional expectation is. So that's how these things build upon one another. And ultimately, it's about improving our achievement across the board, whether that's in state tests, MAP testing, graduation requirements, and some of my most favorite measures are CTE credentialing programs, right? And how many of our students leave us and are ready to enter the work world because they have a credential.
Well, question on
Yes.
your theory of action.
Yes.
Let's just say for the sake, I do agree, but let's just say for the sake, I agree with this. One, it answered a lot of the community conversation plugs. But also, it looks like it's more towards, which I kind of appreciate, heavy achievement with students as far as career and education. And really, just like you said, making them ready to contribute to the world and provide for themselves, their family, et cetera, when they graduate, which I think in the past I might not have been so keen on. Since we're talking about the budget, let's say we're already down $3 million. Let's say you add another $2 million to it and we down $5 million. Would you as the superintendent be able to withhold this theory of action with less money? Because I assume and I'm gonna let you explain fully, because I assume you're basing this budget on what we have now.
I am, and so, yes, I mean, here's the thing, at the end of the day, these are the buttons that we need to press, right? We need to go full on these matters here. And the question is, resource, we will have to make do with what we have.
Yeah.
The question is, how much does that slow us down, right? It's not about, do we move in this direction? This is the direction we must move in. The question is, how fast or slow do we go? And that is what it comes down to resources.
Understood.
So, and I fully acknowledge, I mean, not to be, I don't know, callous, but I've got 3 decades in public education. We are always asked to do more with less.
Yeah.
This is not a new conversation for me, right? And so, because here's what I know, the students will show up, and we are obligated to serve them at high levels and to prepare them, with or without resources, right? That is not an option. I can't say, well, don't come, we don't have resources, right? And so, again, I always try to bring us back to data because all of us are very passionate about what we're doing here for the community and our students. And again, I want to draw attention, if you look at our achievement in literacy over the last 3 years, you'll see that there's mixed results. But interesting, look at grade 3, which is the cohort, this was last year's grade 3 students in the green bar. They made over a 10% gain in a single year.
That's OG.
Yes, it is OG. That I would absolutely correlate to OG implementation.
For the people at home, OG means?
Orton Gillingham, which is our methodology of
If you see 'em,
instruction,
people
right,
down their arm
right.
and they're-
It's a multi-sensory, explicit, and systemic approach to teaching literacy. Did I get that right? And so, I think we're beginning to really see the signs of the dramatic changes that we've made, knowing that last year was year 1. It usually takes 3 years to see changes in data. So the fact that we're beginning to see that so quickly is very promising. Now,
Well-
go ahead.
If we continue to see that,
Yes.
I mean, it's easy to say that's what it is, and I hope it is, but I remember last year, Ms. Dorsey asking a question. Unfortunately, kids that were beyond 3rd grade and aren't getting that, there's never, they can't catch up.
Sure. No, I know. And what we have done at the middle school is we have trained people at the middle school, but what happens is, and you'll hear us often in education talk about Tier 1, which means everyone gets it, right? Tier 2 are for those students who, they didn't quite get it when everybody else got it, so we're going to take it to a second level of support. And then for students who have even more severe challenges, we talk about like Tier 3, right, which is like a more intense intervention. So we do offer Orton Gillingham at the middle school for students in Tier 2 and Tier 3.
When does that happen? During their,
Win time.
which is it, the high school, the Trojan time? Is that
Yes.
the same thing? Okay.
Mhm. Our elementary schools call it academy time is when they do intervention. So there's time built into the schedule where students who need extra help can get that extra help. And it's, whether you're tier 2 or tier 3, it depends on the intensity. So maybe I'm a tier 2 student and I go Tuesdays and Thursdays, but if I were a tier 3, I might go Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, right? So I get a higher dosage of the intervention, as an example. And again, when we look at our student groups, right, because again, to Ms. McKenzie's important point around understanding our student needs, right, you can see here how our students are doing by demographics and economics and language categories. And then here for math as well, you know, when we look at, again, I want to look at that third grade, we see improvement in the last 2 years, and a lot of our math curriculum, but most importantly, our math state tests, and even the college SAT test, right, preparation tests, are very much scenario, word-based problems. I know part of the classes I was in today, the kids were working through a scenario-based problem where they had to reason through and identify what formula applies to this problem, right? And so it's not just, here's a raw formula, plug in the numbers and the variables and out pops the answers. They have to actually think through the situation, which is what people have to do in their careers when they use math in their career. So that's why that's so important. But if you're not a strong reader, you're going to struggle on our math test.
2 quick questions before you move on. On the last slide, students with disabilities, they are defined as what?
Students with disabilities, let's see, yeah, for either math or reading. They are students who qualify for special education services. So there are a number of codes that you qualify for. So it may be that you're a student with,
That'd be like IEP, trouble?
yes, perfect, yeah, thank you.
And then on the slide that you just done with mathematics, is that why put a lot of onus on math in your action of theory to kind of start adjusting that downward slope we've seen?
Yes, right, exactly. And this is why STEAM is important, right? Because we know if we look out into the economy today and project into the future, the high demand, high wage, high skill, high wage, and in-demand jobs are fundamentally STEAM professions, right? The medical profession, the engineering profession, right? The, I would say inventive professions, right? Like creating solutions, right? Engineering solutions for whatever the problem is. I think there's like 8 great engineering problems. Right. Any of these types of things, you really have to have strong science and strong mathematics, right? It's important not to leave the arts out, and here we think about fine arts, but I am a humanities teacher, so I naturally want to put a plug in for humanities, because what we know is it is the creative thinking paired with the math and the scientific skill and knowledge that leads to new solutions, right? You have to have levels of creative thinking. And ultimately, creative thinking, regardless of what field it's applied in, is ultimately how we invent new technologies, is how we invent new solutions, right? And so it's important not to leave that arts component out here.
In STEM, I really haven't heard that acronym used before I met you. Is that something new to King County?
No, that is a common acronym used in the fields of education. I know it's not a snazzy acronym, right? But it does stand for science, technology, engineering, math. If you put the arts in, you get to the STEAM. And so you'll oftentimes hear people say
just
STEM or
with
STEAM with arts,
Okay,
arts in it.
understood.
Okay, so again, looking at our data here again to support your thinking, these are all part of the PowerPoint that's publicly available. These data points are pulled from the Maryland Report Card, which is the state website that's publicly available. I went ahead and did the legwork to pull the last 3 years because to me, if we're looking at data, we want to look at trend data to see, are we trending up? Are we trending down? Or in these cases here, we're looking at a flat line.
I was going to say, other than white demographic, it's pretty flat.
It is, and that's part of why I'm focusing on math. Go ahead.
Sorry, and the only thing, just looking at this, because I know that, students with disabilities seem like its own thing, but that covers all these demographics.
Correct, which
And so,
tells.
yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. And so that's where I'm hoping, to get a better understanding of percentage-wise of the full population of like how many students
Oh,
fall
right.
within.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
The pie graph, sorry, I didn't include the pie graph.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
And maybe I'll go back and update that just for the general public as well, to have a pie graph of our demographics. Go ahead.
So in regards to the STEM she's asking about, I remember, I don't know how long ago, a lot of parents got upset, well, how come my students aren't in STEM class? There was a little issue there, so I don't know how you're addressing that, but I am really concerned about Hispanic and African Americans being so low. What
Agreed.
can we do? I mean, I know you have the AAE, BB programs. I mean, I work with some kids, but what can be done to help some of these kids out? I mean, just explain to me what's going on here.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I appreciate it, because we can't overlook any group of students, right? That's why it's important to also break it down. We look at the whole, and we look at the parts of the whole. There are some significant changes we made this year at the middle school in particular. I'll focus on the middle school, because we're going to be bringing a presentation forward about the changes we've made this year at the middle school that address exactly what you're talking about here. So I know Ms. McGee had brought up win time. So at the middle school, their intervention period is, they refer to as win time, which stands for what I need time. And that is where students go to whatever teacher that they need support from, and that's really data driven. That's where the leaders at the school and the teachers at the school are looking at students in their individual performance, and that's where we get into moving these individual students, right, or these individual groups, because if you have, let's say, an African-American student who also receives special education services, right, and they need extra help in reading, and they are in that Tier 2 intervention with Orton Gillingham, or maybe Tier 3, and they're going Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays to get that extra support. Well, as their achievement goes up, you're going to see both our African-American and our students with disabilities achievement go up. So that's how you get in there and you really start driving those subgroups by addressing those individual needs.
And to follow up on the disadvantaged categories, you might be jumping through slides and you might get to this, but one thing I have not heard, looking at the economically disadvantaged with, close to 80% of our students being in poverty, I haven't heard anything about how to address the overall in that, because I do agree with African American, Hispanics, and a lot of others categories, but if you address poverty overall, I think everyone should automatically rise in achievement. What plans do you have as a superintendent and in the budget moving forward, based on what we have, to address poverty for our school system?
Yeah, great question, and I would agree, right, because poverty strikes all racial groups, all ability groups, right? Poverty is indiscriminate. That is really where the community schools comes in, right? Because that provides those wraparound services. That's where things like concentration of poverty funding matter so much, and we're excited that next year our high school and Galena Elementary have now hit the threshold where they will qualify for concentration of poverty funds, meaning they will get the personnel grant next year to bring on a community schools facilitator who will work with the schools and parents and students to do the needs assessment to identify. So some of the things that we're able to do to address and fill those support structures is provide additional after-school tutoring programs, after-school enrichment programs, other resources, food bank programs, clothing resources. So there are some of the things that our concentration of poverty grant funds do address, and they are funded through Blueprint funds, right? So
And that's
that really-
protected, right?
That is, and it's one of the things, though, that there may be shifts in that this year, again, depending upon the legislation. So I'm trying to think where to begin. So one of the proposals this year in the governor's legislation is they would like to freeze concentration of poverty funds at this year's rate. So let me explain. The way the Blueprint funding, and I'm going to oversimplify this for anybody who's listening, so please don't take these numbers exact. This is just to demonstrate the point. Let's say, for example, this year, Mary's a student who's economically disadvantaged at a school. A school might get $100 for every student who's economically disadvantaged this year. in the original blueprint legislation, next year, instead of getting 100 for Mary, they might get 150. And the year after that, they might get 200. What the governor's proposal is, we freeze it at 100. So you get 100 next year again, and 100 the year after, instead of that increasing.
Looks better than taking it away.
Yeah, absolutely. 100 is better than nothing, but naturally, I want to get everything we can to support Mary, right? So we would like to see them honor the original promise. But we understand, the world is an imperfect place. We make decisions, conditions change, we have to make adjustments, right? This is what leadership is. So the concentration in poverty funds are still in place for next year. The question remains right now, based on what the legislature does that continue to increase at the rate they originally said, or is it frozen at this rate for a couple of years? And that's for the
What they
legislatures to
decide.
decide.
Could I ask
Yes,
a
ma'am.
question? On slide 16,
Okay,
Back on there.
which one is that?
16,
I don't have the.
two
slide.
back.
Oh, two back, okay, this one? The literacy,
No,
okay.
it's one more.
One more, this one? I'm sorry, I don't have them numbered in front.
Yeah, they're numbered for us on the side.
It's the one after that.
Maryland Comprehensive Assessment, an
This one?
MCAP slide.
For
It's
literacy?
Percent
Well, I'll
proficient for
tell you
all
what it has
students
on
by
it.
grade
Okay.
course.
It's that one. It's that one.
Oh, the math one, that's why I was in literacy, this one,
No,
there we
it's
go.
comprehension.
Yes, oh, comprehensive,
Yes. Would the reason for the low percentage in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade be because they didn't have the advantage of the Orton Gillian in the elementary?
yes, I would say it's a combination of things, right? And we know in education, it's hard to have a hard scientific this, that, but I would absolutely say, if we look at those groups of students, think about what grade they were in 5 years ago when the pandemic hit, right? So if you were in 6th grade last year and you go back 5 years, you were what, in 1st or 2nd grade when the
And they didn't have
pandemic
it.
hit? And so they were fighting, I would say, an uphill battle naturally because the conditions were so difficult to teach foundational skills. And we didn't have Orton Gillingham in place at that time. So, so that's why we do have Orton Gillingham, and we're trying to sort of, I wouldn't say triage, but, we're trying to respond after the fact. But you see those cohorts of students who were so dramatically impacted by the disruption of the pandemic. And it was globally disruptive for all systems in every way, right? And these young people in particular were at a very vulnerable point in their education in those very early grades.
And I hear you saying that they're implementing it into the middle school, like for intervention?
Yes, ma'am.
To try to help them to catch up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because a couple of years ago, I don't think that they had it where they were using it in there.
Correct.
So that's good. The other thing, I was kind of shocked, but not really in a sense, when Mr. Queen had talked about the STEM. It was the same question I had 2 years going, almost 3 years ago, when it came to STEM, because it wasn't something that we hear of much when our children were in school. Is it any way, I don't know if it was because of who we are or what it is, what the reason for that is, but I just don't feel like our children should have to miss it, whatever the problem, whatever happened within the miscommunication or lack of communication when it comes to that. So I'm wondering if it's something that can be sent out to all parents in the elementary years, because the children have to be prepared by the time they get to high school. If you hear about it and they're in the 10th or 11th grade, it's not going to help, because you have to be eligible for,
Doesn't it start in middle school, or somehow
it does
they've
start-
been on the track, so to speak?
Right, well, that's right now, what we have in place is a STEM program at the middle school that you really do need to already be in that accelerated math
That's right, you need to know everything.
exiting elementary school. And that's why it's important to think about it not just at a certain grade band. You need to think about that from pre-K, right? Because we've got to kind of backwards map that readiness, so that as many students as possible have that opportunity for that particular program in STEM. But I'm really talking about kind of expanding and having very deliberate experiences at the elementary to prepare students.
Yes.
So that as they're getting into middle school, they can explore those different pathways, right? Because we know students who are excited about their pathway, right, when they get into high school, they have higher attendance, they have higher engagement, they have higher achievement, right? So we've got to make sure that students have develop an opportunity to think about what direction they are exploring. Not that they have to make a commitment at 15 to be an engineer, but if they have an interest in engineering and we give them opportunities to experience what engineering is like, it will help them decide. I'll use myself as an example. I went to Baltimore Polytechnic Institute as a high school student. I thought I wanted to be a naval architect. I took those engineering classes that I had in high school and discovered that I really didn't want to do that. That really wasn't going to be what I wanted to do in life. So, but I had those opportunities to explore that before I went and spent a lot of money on an engineering degree only to decide that's not really what I want, right? I was able to figure that out earlier because I had those opportunities. And I'm just an average kid in a school system, right? So,
I was going to say, the flip side of that, and this is something that was discussed at the May Fall Conference, is that, let's say, you sign up for something CTE in high school, and you start to get a passion for, we'll say it is engineering. You know that when you get to college, these are the courses you need to take, as opposed to starting at a school that it turns out doesn't offer what you really want or need, and you're not late to the game. I mean, it works
Right.
both ways.
right, exactly. So that's why I offer really STEAM as something for us to fully invest in and sort of trademark ourselves.
Gives us direction,
Yeah.
so to speak.
And I just want to, if I may, just go a little bit further for you. Again, my goal tonight is to help kind of cultivate and support you in your thinking, not just for this FY26 budget, because that's one piece in a larger puzzle, right? Many of you, we have some new members who will just beginning a 4-year tenure. We have other members who have experience under their belt. And, so this, I want you to think about FY26 as one in a series of budget cycles, okay? So, for example, if we want superior performance, we're going to invest in the science of reading methodology, which is what we have been doing with Orton Gillingham, professional development for our teachers with letters, and the state is offering free SUNY training, which reinforces that, to get, compounding achievement, improved achievement year upon year, right? You don't go from low performance to excellent performance overnight. That builds year upon year upon year. And
I'm
this,
sorry,
yeah, go
you
ahead.
said what type of training? Free something training?
SUNY, it's, I forget what the acronym SUNY stands for, but it is, our state superintendent, is very committed to literacy, and so she has gotten financial investors to provide free professional development for all teachers and administrators in the state. The organization I think that they offer it through is called SUNY, but it's Science of Reading, professional development. I know myself, I'm signed up for it, and it goes for recertification credits, and it's free to all teachers across the state, thanks to Dr. Wright.
Yeah, that's all.
And then for mathematics, again, it's really investing in that mathematical reasoning in addition to numeracy and problem-solving skills. And so many of us, when we went through math classes, it was really about numeracy and using algorithm. It was less about reasoning, and that's really what career readiness is anchored in. You already have to have, of course, the foundational skills, just like you have to have the foundational skills in literacy. And then when we talk about MTSS, we have MTSS, our elementary schools are
What's that
very
stand for?
multi-tiered
something?
systems of support so
Okay.
that responding to interventions and enrichments. Our elementary schools are very good at that. And so, which brings me to our middle school. So I really want to focus heavily on building out the system at the middle school, and they have already begun this process this year with their WIN program. And, yes, sir.
Dr. McCombs, real quick, before you go to middle school.
Sure.
One last question for elementary. What year is Orton Gilliam? Just starts at third?
No, it starts at pre-K.
Pre-K, okay.
I'm sorry. Kindergarten.
Because I was going to
stand
ask,
corrected.
how is pre-K feeding into that, so that way the slopes continuously go up?
Correct.
Because pre-K, one of the things we do extremely well, correct?
It is, and right, because we are ahead of most school systems because we offer more
Full day.
pre-K, full day than,
To everybody.
than any other system in the state.
All right, it's just for my mental notes, I'm watching.
Sure. Well, and I appreciate, because it helps me make sure that, you know, we also want to build the community's general understanding, because information is different than understanding, right? Sometimes people have information and they think they understand, but you need to have context and understanding to make meaning of information. So I put up here, this is our middle school report card, and you can see, you know, just for ease, 2 out of 5 stars, right? We acknowledge wholeheartedly that our middle school achievement has to make dramatic improvements. That's part of the dramatic change in schedule that the administration implemented this year. It's part of the very intentional focus on the win time and how to provide very data-driven focus interventions for our students, as well as enrichments for those students who are performing on level and are ready to perform at higher levels. But I always like to provide some data, and so this is our overall picture of the middle school based on the state report card.
For the
So,
Go ahead.
Go, Trish.
I was going to say, so I'm looking at your data,
Uh-huh.
and obviously it was the 2 stars, and I'm looking at the things that are on the middle school's list.
Yep.
Yeah.
What sort of, how would those things, quote unquote,
Impact.
help us to be excellent? What do
Yeah.
we need to be an excellent?
That's
And I'm
right.
looking at some of those things, and I don't know that all of those
I don't know
address
that.
that.
Right,
So,
well, right.
And I don't want to bemoan, you know, how important world language is, or, you know, adding to full-time health and something arts, United Arts, or
Right.
whatever it's called.
Unified, yeah.
But when and again, this is probably age-driven because I'm older than everybody sitting at this table. I think of the old-fashioned reading, writing, and arithmetic. I want our kids to be able to do the basics before they learn to do it in Spanish. So
Agree.
I'm looking at these things and sort of need direction from you. Which one of these is going to help you change the statistics up there for the middle school? Or is going to, not you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
Who's
well,
going to
us as a
help us
whole,
as
right.
As a school system.
Right, and I think that's a great question, right? I mean, and I would say, I would argue, to me, of these options, what I would actually argue for was the world language teacher, because while I understand we want students to be proficient in English before other things, science actually demonstrates that as students acquire multilingual, they become multilingual, their critical thinking and reasoning actually improves in other areas, right?
I wouldn't disagree.
Yeah.
That's why I'm actually
Yeah.
asking
Yeah.
you, because if we have to prioritize,
Right.
I want to be able to go back and say, well, of all these things in the
Yes.
there really aren't that many, there's only
Right.
about half a dozen, that the world language teacher is tipping the scale more than having an assistant principal.
Right.
Or more days for the counselors. I mean,
Right, right.
I'm asking you to sort of, not tell
Weigh
me what
in,
to
weigh
do,
in.
but
Yeah,
but
weigh
sort
in.
of provide the direction.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, and I will, I definitely will. I don't want to, I'd like to give you a chance to also kind of think through it on your own. But you're exactly, I appreciate the question, because it kind of demonstrates what I asked you to do. Think through these things and come back to
Right.
these sort of take the theory of action as sort of our guardrails, right? Like this is the lane that we, all arrows
Ultimately, the
need to.
goal is student achievement, right?
Correct.
So I need, well, I say I.
Yeah.
I think us collectively all need to know which are the things
That will support
that we can,
you.
we can only have a few Snicker bars this
Right,
year, you know?
right, right.
Which one of these are the most expedient as we aim
Climb the
towards
ladder.
excellence?
Right. So, and I think that's exactly what I need you to be thinking about and doing. And I too will bring to the table. What I would like to do is, as we enter our next session together, is hear from you what your thinking is. Like, I'm thinking this because of whatever reason.
Okay.
And then ultimately, when I come forward with my proposed budget, it will incorporate your thinking, it will incorporate the community's thinking,
Yeah.
it will incorporate our leaders' thinking and request, and of course, every step of that way, I will be working with our team to narrow that down, right? So that we end up with that very tight focused budget in light of, budget constraints, and yet increasing demands and expectations of achievement.
What if, and I don't mean this, I don't know if I'm gonna use the word in the right context, in a facetious manner. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at, when we look at the data, the hardest hitting or lowest performing is the middle school.
That's right.
And then when you look at that, and then I come look at a wish list,
Mm-hmm.
I look at these things, and to kind of Trish's point, I don't see how these 6 items
Are going to drive
help us
that.
go forward with what we're trying to achieve as a school system. So in this event, something like this,
Yeah.
do you as a superintendent then go back to the leadership at the middle school and say, hey, this is a good starting point, but we need you to kind of give us something with a direction, or here's our goal in our school system? Is that something that happens? Because if, let's say I had to vote right now,
Yeah.
I'm looking at these and like, yeah, they cool, but I'm looking at your data. I need more.
Sure. I think what this is a good opportunity to, if you turn to the 3rd page of the spreadsheet, you're going to see a big chunk here that's white.
White.
And you'll see, and these are requests, notice it's under the Department of Instruction. So these are sort of, if you will, central requests that live actually in the schools, right? So the principal isn't requesting this because we already have this in place, right? So for example, IM math materials, Lexia learning, there are things on the list that are in the white category that we are already doing
That fit the
that
group.
address those points that you're asking. So the principal didn't ask for them because
Okay.
the principal knows that
So
they're
you're saying
already
to
in
us, we
place.
already have some of those things?
Yes.
Okay, I get it.
Yep.
Yeah.
You should have led with that.
Okay, I didn't mean to bury the lead. But that's why, again, as you look through this, know that the color coding is telling you something, right?
Right,
The white are
okay.
things that we are currently doing, and we're looking to sustain them, which is why I show them, right? So that you know to keep, for example, to buy the replacement consumables for our Wit and Wisdom, which is our literacy, secondary literacy program. Elementary, secondary, make sure I got that correct. Our secondary literacy program, to get the workbooks, which are our consumables, it's going to cost us $30,000, right, to keep that going. So I appreciate your question, so that you sort of see it's, you know, the green is sort of like the on top of what we're
Okay.
currently doing.
Your extra ice cream scoop.
That's right, the extra scoop, but not with the title grants.
And is the sentiment for the middle school that we're just going to put in more administrative, like structural, what the classes look like, and rather than getting a new teacher, like how the school day looks, more changes instead of
Yeah.
these two?
It's really about offerings, and there's sort of a two-pronged approach, and in fact, thank you, because you kind of give me this opportunity to talk about superior performance at the middle school. So what will it take for us to get to superior performance for our middle grades? And it's going to take sort of multi-pronged approach here. First and foremost, there is no substitute for the rigor of everyday classroom, which is why I'm in classrooms. Again, we were in math classrooms today, specifically looking at the implementation of a program that we are spending money on. And, you know, are our students experiencing the actual rigor that they need to experience day after day after day to be fully prepared to conquer the state test at the level we expect, right? So that is first and foremost. So you see I have rigorous instruction, and that's across the board, right? That's in all of those classes, the state measures, reading and math at the middle school, but actually we have a social studies test now, I think, as well, and a science test at the middle grades. Second is that win time, right? If you're getting strong instruction every day and you're still struggling, what is that extra intervention? How are we creating extra time and extra instruction? What I have found is that when a student is struggling, often what they need is more time and more practice and more one-on-one attention to understand what it is they didn't get, right? And that requires time and structure. That's why this year's redesign of the schedule was so significant. That's why their work around attending to the data and is our interventions affecting change, right? They did just bring on LUMAS, did I say that right? Intervention, and they just got it in place in January. So we're really just getting that up and running, and that is really like a assessment, adaptive intervention. So as students are working through it, it adjusts to their next level of challenge in literacy and mathematics, I believe, right?
It's very much in line with that, and I was just going to add one thing, and I don't want to be called out, so.
Thank you.
Everything Dr. McComas has said is absolutely right, and I have to give our leadership at the middle school credit because they were bending the ear of Mrs. Rose, the principal at Garnett, and she said Lumos was a game changer. Both Heather Davis and Brenda Rose mentioned that with that program, it helped them really individualize the intervention. So it's an assessment, but it's also aligned with the state assessment, so it gives practice opportunities for the students as well.
Shouldn't we, I mean, I understand the challenges with middle school, but shouldn't we be quote-unquote fully investing in the lower grades so that, I mean, we're just not saying when we get to middle school, oh, we have a problem. Shouldn't
Yeah.
we?
It's about building a foundation all the way through.
Okay, yeah.
And if you look at what we have in place at the elementary schools, we have a strong foundation that is demonstrating stronger and stronger growth, right? And that strong foundation is the OG. It
Yeah,
is.
But shouldn't that strong foundation be ascending into middle school? I mean, okay.
Yes, and I think, and that's why I'm focusing on the middle school is because
They
we
need to
didn't really
catch up.
have it there, right?
Okay,
They
I
need to
get it.
catch up,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
well, that's what
But
we're
you're
talking about.
absolutely
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And this is a pattern that is across the nation, right? Not just here in Kent County. I've seen this in 3 other school systems, and if you look at national data, across the nation, we're squishy in the middle, right? And I always use the metaphor of exercise. You know, when you talk to people about being fit, right? It's not just lifting weights and having strong arms and strong legs. You need to have a strong core, right? The middle school is the core. And so what happens traditionally across the nation, right? We are all very focused on elementary because that's about learning to read and foundational math, right? We're very focused on there. And then we sort of like jump to high school and graduation and getting them across the stage. And we tend to not fully focus and invest on the middle grades. And I am offering that we are bold and fully focus and not overlook how substantial those middle years are. Because as long as we stay, squishy in the core, we're not going to have good balance. We're not going to have good agility. We're not going to be able to win that marathon that we need to win. And so that's why I offer, and you've heard, each of you individually have heard me say in everyday language, we go all in at the middle grades, right? With interventions, with wraparound services, with high rigor in the classrooms and strong, robust interventions and enrichment so that we don't lose students' interest and passion for learning in those middle grades. 7th grade is a pivotal year. And if we don't really close gaps before they leave 8th grade, we are setting them up for a trajectory of losing interest in school and really losing a vision for their life. And that impacts their economy of themselves and their future family, right? Yes. So these years are more critical than people realize, and of course, students are going through phenomenal biological changes. It's hard on kids, it's hard on teachers, it's hard on parents. Yeah. So we need to really focus there.
Well, and if things go the way we hope they do and we get a new middle school, we'll be starting it a year earlier because our middle school will be 5th graders now.
That's right, that's right.
Question.
So, yes, go ahead, sorry.
I think it was the previous slide 19. I just want to know in the percentile rank, we're 21. Is that out of the school districts or what's that number actually?
That's out of the state. Out of middle
24?
schools, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm, yeah.
So I have a broad question. So across the United States, they're saying that we pay more per student. I think we're ranked 40th in the world on education. Would you explain to us, can you come up with some kind of plan to really fight this? I mean, we need to do something. This has been going on for years and years and years and years. Are we doing something wrong? I mean, with all our students? What is going on with our whole society? I want our school system to pull out of this rut and do something, and
I agree, let's do it.
I know.
Let's do it by going all in on middle school, and I mean that sincerely.
I'm just concerned about it.
Yeah, I am too. I think, one of the things, and I'm not exactly sure I'm clear on your exact question, other than what are we doing to make ourselves superior in our performance. I would say that there's a lot of things that go into, I've served in urban, suburban, and rural school systems. And one of our major challenges is the compounding impact that poverty has. I think that's why concentration of poverty is such a powerful strategy that our state, and we are leading the nation. We're one of the few states that has fully committed to concentration of poverty and community schools approach. And if you look at the data, where we have robust community school programs, achievement goes up, attendance goes up, right? Because it's addressing a lot of those wraparound supports that empower a student to then be able to focus on learning, right? So that's a powerful strategy that we are doing here in Kent County as a function of the state commitment to that.
Does some of this have to do with the parents of some of these kids? I mean, can you get them more involved? I mean, I hear stories
Bring
where...
your community back.
Yeah, that's exactly why the community schools are so important and our community conversations, right? Engaging parents, because here's what we know. You help a parent, you help a child, right? That's a fact. You help a parent, you help a child. So this is where these community school resources, wraparound resources to support a parent, support a child, and support a family, help allow a child to then come to school more able to focus on reading, more able to focus on math, as opposed to worrying about where's the next meal coming from, am I going to have a winter jacket
So are
this
we
year?
reaching out to parents? Is that one of your goals? I mean...
That's all part of our community schools effort. Our community schools facilitators do a great deal of outreach to our parents. They do a great deal of needs assessment, right, where they are researching and understanding what are the needs that our children and our parents have in this particular school community, and then coordinating community resources and supports. And that can look like everything from organizing backpacks that go home on Fridays with food supplies to get the family through the weekend, to making sure that we have a clothing bank and a winter coat drive, to coordinating eye exams and dental resources. So it really, when we talk about that wraparound support, it touches on the needs of the parents and the students in that particular school community.
Thanks.
If that helps.
Yes.
If I may, and I know, I love this stuff, so I could talk for years about this. The last thing I want to just offer, and we have been talking about this, in addition to driving towards superior performance and achievement, what do we, as Kent County, do above and beyond, different, better than anybody else? And that's where I offer we go and truly invest in our STEAM programs. And I would begin at no cost for next year by just really pulling together what we have and highlighting that and making sure that our community understands what we already have in place and how do their experiences at the elementary then enable them to pursue experiences at the middle school and on to. So what I mean by this, again, when I always think about funding in over a course of multiple years, right? Next year I would offer really stepping into that STEM programming is really about lifting up what we currently are doing and making sure that these things work in concert, right? And that they're not sort of random acts, right? So that what students at Galena may be experiencing at elementary will be unique and different compared to students at Rock Hall or Garnett. Another example here, just to talk about what we already have in place and how, for me, the idea for next year's budget is to grow what we currently have in place is our makerspace. I'll pick on Mr. Poor because he's exceptional with it. We have a makerspace program with our high school students. He's expanded to include our middle school students. We have our tech liaisons at the elementary schools building makerspaces in their elementary schools. So it's a good example of things we're already doing, and we want to just kind of build and expand on that and make sure that parents know what we have, right? So step one is making sure everyone's aware of what we already have in place as we continue to think about, for example, if down the road we add, chorus, middle school or an elementary school type of program. So just so you sort of see how these things come together as a whole vision around decision-making. And then, I know we have been answering questions as we went, but that was really, this part was to continue to sort of answer questions that you may have to help support your thinking between now and our next meeting. And so this is sort of, you see how these things are building together and building momentum towards narrowing what it is we will fund in next year's budget and what are things that we may defer to out-year budgets.
Two things. One, this seems like, well, I do like the theory of action and the trajectory of it and all the categories of foundation. Is that what you're trying to give our school system, a foundation to build on, so to speak?
I think it's building, it's strengthening the foundation that we have put in place is really where we're at, because we did some significant changes over the last couple of years because of grant funding, right? We had this influx of grant funding, which, all grants come with requirements. Those requirements helped us put in place some really strong foundations. So it's about supporting and sustaining that and expanding sort of the impact of that.
Right. And one last question.
Oh, sorry.
One last question. For the middle school, and I know we had talked in our one-on-ones or other meetings a little more deeper in it. With us needing a new middle school, how much of the onus should be going into that situation now, instead of just saying, wait for what we can do for the new middle school?
Right, a great question for us to think through as a group here. I would offer, it would be foolish to just sit and wait, right? We need to be building momentum, strengthening our academic program, building out our resources while we are simultaneously pursuing the additional funding and building a new building, right? So that it's not one before the other, it's really both simultaneously. Here's in all bluntness, as I went out and I have met with community members far and wide over 7 months, and I continue at every opportunity to meet people and listen deeply to their concerns about our school system, their hopes and aspirations for our school systems. I've had people say to me, well, we left the school system because it wasn't rigorous enough. Well, we're addressing that. We left the school system because, frankly, the programming was not, they didn't have enough electives, they didn't have enough athletic programs, they didn't have a full array of enriching opportunity, and so it basically, you weren't competitive. I took my child someplace else because I had the resources to take them someplace else. And that sort of is, you can get into a downward spiral where, again, there's at some point less is less, right? And so the trick is, how do we optimize what we currently have, make sure people are aware of what we currently have, and at the same time, increase the rigor, which it drives the achievement, right? And that comes down to everyday classroom instruction, right? Which is why it's important that we have evidence-based approaches to instruction in Orton-Gillingham. It's why using the science of reading, professional learning about understanding how to diagnose reading challenges and knowing what intervention matches the particular challenge. It's very diagnostic. Process, but that takes expertise and time and structure to do that, and then match, to have those data-driven interventions in a timely fashion for students. That doesn't happen by itself.
I don't know anybody sitting here that doesn't support us having a new middle school, but yeah, they go together, but kind of what's going on in the building and what the building looks like are related, but they're not, in the sense that, let's say we get a state-of-the-art, brand-new middle school, but we don't have the quality programs to put in there. What was the purpose of that?
Correct, right.
And let's say we don't get that. We still need to up our game in the instruction, everything else. I mean,
correct.
Again, I don't want to talk the government out of not giving us more money, but what I'm saying is that we just need to do better in all the things that are going into this, so that, we have a really nice little bow on top of it. But every single thing you just said, not a single parent said to you, I took my kid out of the middle school because it was a crappy building.
Right, well,
I mean,
right,
No,
I
I know,
think,
but I'm just saying, but
yeah,
but
yeah,
you
they didn't
that.
say you have a broken
No, I know,
infrastructure.
but, I know, but what
Yeah.
they're saying is, at the end of the day, a parent's more concerned, I think, about what's going on inside the building. I mean,
Yes,
I wrote
yes,
that in my
agreed.
letter to the General Assembly and said, yeah, I know that it's more important about what's going in and that that the building, just a brand-new building would just do so much to lift everybody's spirits. But I'm just saying, I don't think we can, I'm trying to address Mr. Queen's question, and I'm only speaking for myself, but I don't think we just pause and wait
Correct.
to see if we get that new building, and if we don't get that new building, well, we're just going to continue to do what we're doing. We need to keep doing, to rise like this, and hopefully we'll be met with a new building, but even if
Correct.
we're not met with a new building, we still need to be
Agreed.
upping the game.
Agreed, agreed. Thank you.
Yeah, no, just because when I look at this, it would be nice to have access to those community conversations notes, and I don't know if those are posted anywhere, or...
Yeah, I will get those up. I know Mr. DeVilio was not feeling well, so I will get those posted for you. I will I'll send you the pie chart on the overall demographics, and I will update that PowerPoint to include the pie chart for everyone's sake and the public as well, absolutely. And I appreciate, like, again, I hope that I've helped you kind of build a way of thinking through many, many layers of the complicated process here as we begin to narrow this down. So,
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
Speaking of narrowing it down, the dollars and cents of the whole thing. At some
Yeah.
point, are we going to have like this, say, well, I'm going to make something up, okay? You're going to have a $35 million budget, okay? And there's some that are non-negotiable, so that's going to take a certain chunk out of it.
89% of it.
Yeah, exactly, and a few other things, so that we're, so all of a sudden, we got to figure out not so much what we have to cut, but what we can keep.
It's right there,
Okay.
2.15.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is the bottom line, right?
Okay, thank you.
That really is the bottom line, more or less.
Our funding for employees is about 90%. What's the typical average in the state of Maryland?
Most school systems, their personnel is somewhere between 80, 82, or 83%. We are at 89% of our budget is our people. So we are proportionally investing more of our dollars in people and less money in other things, other material things.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for the question, so that everyone sort of has a concept of that. And perhaps that's a pie chart that would be helpful as well, so we can,
Well, let me ask you this. I know we said this in private conversation. I might have said it here before. Speaking of the budget, especially when I was campaigning, and even before that, the community will always say we need to trim the fat because we feel like we're giving personnel and administration so much money. We need to cut there. We should cut there. What would you say to that? Like,
Yeah.
not specifically what would you say, but as a school system, how should we address those type of questions?
yeah,
Oh, yeah, let's have less teachers, yeah. Is that what they want,
Yeah, well, I will say, it is it's easy for people to say administration is bloated and fatty. That's easy, that's a cheap comment in my worldview, again, having served in four school
And then you
systems.
explained to us, I don't know, I think it was at the January meeting, administration isn't really a person. Administration is operating the school system.
Right, is the administration of the enterprise,
Yeah,
right? Exactly, and I will tell you, the state does have a chart that compares the size of central teams across all the school systems. You can go on there and you will see we are by far the leanest. Now, people would say, well, of course, because you're the smallest student population. But here's the bottom line, like we have about 12 administrators who run the entire organization. Okay? Now, I'm not including our everyday essential people like Miss Manley here, who I could not operate without. But we have Miss Jacomowitz, and she's the instructional lead, and she has she has a person who's in charge of reading and also covers our Title I. We have a person in charge of math, who also has multiple duties.
So you're saying that our administrators wear more than one hat?
Absolutely,
Okay.
and we have a person who does science. We have no one designated for social studies, which is a core area. We have no one specialized in fine arts. We have no one specialized in PE. So these are like the additional hats that people pick up. Where other school systems have a person with expertise in that area leading those areas. We have, Mr. Poor, of course, is our technology lead, but he also does instructional things, which is very exceptional for a chief IT, top IT person. So all of our people do multiple jobs. And I would say, people don't want to hear this, but some of the truth is, so with the blueprint, one of their pillars is accountability, right? So just for the Accountability and Implementation Board, the AIB, there is 174 reports due, right? They are holding us accountable, and so we have to send reports to be accountable on whatever those different reports are. 174, there's 180 days of school, to give you perspective. That does not include all the reporting required for the Maryland State Department of Education, which has lots and lots of annual, daily reports as well, and reporting for federal funds, for federal grants as well. So all of that is work and hours of work that have to happen in addition to, of course, being in schools, supervising instruction, supporting teachers, supporting principals. So, I know it's oftentimes people think, well, if you're not in front of a student, you're not really doing anything. But there is a great deal of work and many, many hours of work that go into required mandated reporting as a public agency to keep things accountable. That has to happen, right? And you have to have people to do that. And it's not just anybody. You need people with the expertise and the resources, like the data resources, to be able to compile those reports in a timely manner and get them to the AIB or MSDE or the federal government. I'm worn out. Any other questions? And, tonight's not our only night. You can reach out to me as a
So
board
when
member.
everybody is finished asking their questions, the question I have for you is, so at our March, was it 10th or whatever our next meeting is?
March 10th.
What are you expecting from us?
Yeah, so I am requesting that on our March 10th meeting, that you come with general guidelines around what you would like me to include in our budget, right? So, and if there are specific things on the spreadsheet that you definitely feel like are a priority that line up with these things that we've discussed tonight, thinking about our data, thinking about our theory of action, and also keeping in mind our budget constraints. So for example, you might come and say, when I think, and I appreciate Ms. McKenzie saying, I really need to sort of see that breakdown of students. So I'll use English learners as an example. We have a growing English learner population. That's a fact. We look at their achievement. That's another fact. Therefore, I think we should support, for example, Garnett and the request of a bilingual instructional assistant based on that. So that's the example of where I would say, these are, if you could come and say, I would really hope that we consider including these things in the budget priority. And my goal will be to take all of your thoughts and guidance, and then I will pull together and do my very best, because I suspect many of you may have similar recommendations, right? Because you're looking at the same pieces of evidence, our data and enrollment.
Is this figure here something that we should use to sum of this and save this bottom line? I mean, all this is $2 million, or should we, utilize 1.5 million of it, and save some for a rainy day fund, or what is?
Yeah, so the 2.5 really needs to incorporate what we have in the white bands to sustain those things. And then that's why what I would say is I would focus on what would you add to what we're doing, because we are really doing some very strong things, and we need to see them through. OG, Orton Gillingham, last year was the first year of full implementation. This is the second year. You know, you really need to see 3 to 5 years often with new initiatives. Often you don't see data impact until year 3. We've already begun to see that, so that's an easy example to say we want to sustain that investment for sure.
Are any of these, and a lot of it is positions, it seems to be. So I'm thinking the answer's no, but are any, no, because I was going to say, are any of these the kinds of things that there might be another grant funding? Is there anything that we might be able, and I know the
Yeah.
problem with grant funding is it's great, and then you get used to having it, and you need it, and then all of a sudden the grant has gone away, and then all of a sudden you need to incorporate it into your budget. But I just wondered if there is an opportunity to maybe save a couple of the things in green because we could find another way to fund
Yeah,
them.
I think first, there's always grants on the horizon, some of which we can see. For example, we know Dr. Wright, the state superintendent, has pulled together resources to issue out, it's a literacy grant to help support our literacy growth across the state. That grant, I don't think the window's not opened yet.
We'll be attending a session soon.
Okay, so I know the window to apply for the state literacy grant will be opening soon. We have 100% intention of applying for that grant. We pursue every grant opportunity we can to supplement our funding. That one we know is out there and coming. Sometimes we don't know what other grants are out there until they become public, but we do pursue that. And I would agree that that's something you can think about, right? So, that's where you can say, I think these things are the most essential. These are things that if we can find grants, that would be that next tier of reach, that we're reaching to bring on board. And then what are those things that we're like, maybe in a year or two, we can consider them in out years. You will also notice on here, for example, if you look at line 25, student support specialist, the school had asked to fund the student support specialist. You'll notice in the justification, we currently have one more year. So we currently have that position for FY26, and it's the last year that it's funded by a grant. But the school wanted to put it on my radar so that they're like, don't forget this time next year that grant goes away, right? So.
Yeah, I saw that with
Yeah.
another grant, that this was the last year for it.
What about the items in the white? Are they non-negotiable?
They are things that we are currently doing, and I would recommend we continue to sustain. And some of these things are, like if you look down for transportation, for example, we have to keep the buses running, right? So there, I would say, the majority of these are really, truly non-negotiable and need to just
Well, is
continue.
there any way that, between now and when we come back in March, that you're able to tell us how much all of the things in white total?
Oh, I can do that. Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh,
'cause
actually, it's already on there. If you look
I
at
thought that was
the,
coming out of the 2.15 mil or whatever it is.
yeah. So if you look, just summarize now, remember, this is the grand wish list. You'll see at the bottom there. Yes, ma'am?
So everything on that does not include everything that's in the budget. So everything that's on that request is pretty much everybody's request that they came, and some people came with requests that were already in the budget. So what you see in white is just some of what is in the budget. I don't want nobody to.
Okay, so that really wouldn't do me any good.
Right, so like utilities and things like that,
Yeah.
aren't on this list, for example.
Okay.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask a question. Remember when you were trying to, you were interested in acquiring a way to get individual data on each student so
Yes.
that you could better help the
Yes, ma'am.
students? Have you been able to do that?
Yes, I was able to redirect some funds this year to bring and get set up it's called Analytics and Insight. So it's a data platform that will allow us, we're in the process of working with the vendor to get all the IT stuff situated, but it'll be up and running for next school year. And that's where we'll be able to sort of, to Mr. Rhodes' point earlier and Ms. McKenzie's point and your point, really look, I'll be able to look even at the central level to say by name and by need. Like Mary, I see she's struggling in Unit 1 math. These are the specific standards she's struggling on. middle school administration, what are we doing? Where are we at, right? So that I can provide that oversight and accountability straight through our organization. So thank you for asking. And we were able to pay for that service for multi-years. So that's why you're not going to see it here, because I've already got that covered. Thank you. Did I sufficiently wear you out?
Where do we go from here?
Yeah, where do we go from here? So you will take some time, you'll look through this, you'll have lots of questions. I'm sure our community will have questions. And then we will meet again March 10th. And I ask that you come back with the things that you believe are significant enough for us to include in next year's budget. And I will take those into consideration when I'm formulating the final budget request.
And when will you bring us your budget, so to speak?
It will not be March 10th, it will be
It must
the
be April then.
April, I have my calendar here, and that's still well within time. The good thing about.
The General Assembly they would be over, so we'll kind of have a better feel
real
on
number.
what we're going to get there.
Yeah, that's one of the things I truly appreciate about our budget timeline here, and it's a beauty of our scale, is that I will present my proposed budget April 14th.
And do you go to the commissioners the next day? Are you expecting us to
No, not-
approve it then? So
No.
we'll approve it in May, and then
Nope.
the day after, I think you'll go to the commissioners? Okay.
Yes. So we have time here. We have time. And the beauty is that our timeline is such that we do have hard numbers by that point. I have other experiences where we were proposing budgets the first week in January, and there's still so much you didn't know, and it was a large budget. So I'm particularly appreciative of, one, how transparent we are here, and two, the timeline that we have, so that ultimately, when we really finalize this, we have hard numbers.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that those revenue streams that we showed, that's based on the projections that we got through MSDE, okay? So they are projected, and a lot could change. But here's what I would offer in terms of our vision and our theory of action. We have some very strong things that we have implemented. We need to stay the course on those things, and we need to really elevate some of the things that we are doing that people don't realize we're doing, and be really thoughtful about how they work in concert, so that they're just not sort of like one-offs. And much of that work is not costly, other than sustaining like Orton Gillingham and illustrative math and our interventions. So I guess what I'm saying is, don't be discouraged. Know that, we have good work to be doing with and without dollars, either way.
Question for March 10th, that's a budget meeting or the regular normal?
That's our
board?
regular.
It's a regular, normal meeting, but a sizable amount of the agenda will be in the budget.
Yeah, I was going to say with that, because I don't want to feel rushed through the budget part, because I
Sure.
think this is the biggest decision a board member can make outside of, hiring a superintendent. I want to be able to have that time during that board meeting to ask the questions, because I know we're going to come with
You're going to have 3 meetings, 3 months to sort of gnash through that. She'll come
Oh, it's
on
not
March,
just on the, I see what you're saying.
March
not just for the
10th. Is when we come back to her and say, these are what we think. Then she's going to take all of that and synthesize it, and then in April, present us her proposed budget.
And then you'll have a work session on that.
We can beat her up that if we want to.
Yeah,
And
we'll
then
get out,
May,
and,
she'll ask us
trim.
to vote on it. We can still ask more questions and still,
Yeah,
And ultimately, you don't like to drag it out to the last minute, but I've seen Kent County do this once. The budget has to be adopted so that it can become effective July 1st. So we got to adopt it by June 30th, but that doesn't mean, I'm not saying we're going to do that to you, but I'm just saying, we can still.
You never know.
I'm just saying, you've got time to ask your questions, okay? You're not going to be
I don't
rushed.
have to do them all on the 10th.
Exactly, yeah, nothing, the 10th is us
Bring it out, yes.
giving her feedback.
yeah.
And just to add, just for clarification, the Kent County Board of Education cannot wait until June 30 to approve, because you need county approval for the budget.
Yeah.
If so, we cannot operate July
Right.
1.
The
Yeah.
latest is May for us, right, to
Yeah.
be able to have to approve. That would be the latest, right?
Yeah.
So the county needs their time. Usually it does take the county between like May and June, and we work with them to get final approval.
Right, because remember, we you know, we take our budget to them, right? Because that's a part of this bigger
Yeah.
picture. So, you know, we'll be good partners and we'll get it there.
Part of our numbers will be built on what they're going to give us, and the recent history has been maintenance of effort, so we kind of know what that number is already. So. Any more questions for Dr. McComas? Ms. Manley, Dr. McComas, anything else you want to share with us?
No, I appreciate
Okay.
the opportunity because I know I'm a talker, but I wanted to make sure you had a frame
Gotcha.
for thinking through.
All righty. We've got
Thanks.
one person for public testimony, and I just want to remind everybody, speakers should limit their comments to 3 minutes. Comments about the actions or statements of individual staff members are not appropriate for public comments and should be referred to the superintendent of schools or processed through available channels. If submitting written testimony, speakers are requested to provide a copy to the president. Please remember that this is an opportunity for the community to address their comments to the board. It is not an opportunity for dialogue. If you have questions that need an answer, please contact the superintendent or write a letter to the Board of Education, and a response will be sent back to you. Are you going to time us for 3
Oh, I
minutes?
will, yes.
I did find Joe's
Timer?
timer, but I'm not sure how it works yet, so I'll have to practice on that. So, sorry, gotcha. So anyhow, we have one speaker, Mike Wall.
Thank you. By the way, the audio system, neither speaking is working.
Oh, okay, thank you for,
Well, actually, this guy is working, but the other guy isn't. It's really hard to hear you guys.
okay, put that on our budget request. Kadoosh.
I don't need a microphone, but good evening, everybody. Good seeing everybody again. I would like to, you have a lot on your plate, and the numbers are challenging. I have empathy for you. I really do. This is not an easy task. You have a lot to read, but I'm going to, especially John and Laura, if you have not read this document, there is a document known as the Fiscal Impact to Implement the Blueprint. Do a search, very easy to get it online. Okay, if you have not read it, please read it. This is a 40-page document, and it talks about the financial impacts on a bi-county basis, bi-year basis, of implementing the blueprint. This is the Department of Legislative Services. These are the folks that put fiscal notes on pieces of legislation to let everybody know how much something is going to cost. I also ask you to go to page 10 and page 11. There are 2 charts. One chart is, both charts are by-year, by-county funding of the blueprint. One chart is with the blueprint, one chart is without the blueprint. It never existed. It doesn't exist. It would be the funding of Kent County Public Schools without Kerwin. It just doesn't exist. Do a little bit of math, and you're going to find out that to fully implement the blueprint will require a 125% increase in real estate taxes for Kent County taxpayers. It's $43.7 million. If you convert revenue into cents, into a tax rate, and divide $340,000, which equivalents 1 cent of tax rate, into $43.7 million, it's an additional $1.28 to implement the blueprint on top of our current tax rate of $1.02. This is a very expensive program. The fact that the state cannot fund it, is having a hard time funding it, it's just a terrible situation. I heard 2 key words tonight which I really like. Trish said prioritize, and Mary said optimize. I'm sorry, Dr. McComas.
It's fine.
Yeah, at this point. I'm 78 years old. I'm on a first-name basis with everybody. Read this document, and you will find how this impacts Kent County, because Kent County is continually highlighted in this document. I know it's 40 pages. You probably have to read it twice, because there's a lot of diagrams and a lot of charts. I'm sure Mary has read it. Probably Trish has read it. I don't know. Frank might have read it. But John and Laura, you guys need to read this, because this it's an eye-opening document. You have an immense challenge. I suggest that you hit the commissioners look, it's county money, but it's not county money, it's taxpayer money. I wonder if a teacher has has put a pencil to how much of a raise they're gonna get by the blueprint, and how much is gonna be taken away because of increases in fees and taxes and everything else to pay for it.
Mr. Wall, I don't.
How much time do I have?
I
I'm
think
done?
it
It just
expired.
went off,
So,
all
yeah,
right,
sorry.
okay.
I didn't want to be,
But
I
thank
didn't
you
want to
for
be
the
rude.
Read
resource.
it and learn, and if you have any questions, contact me, because everybody's got my email in front of them.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Ms. Manley, was there anyone else? Alrighty, so, guys, have anything else? The next meeting of the Board of Education of Kent County will be held on Monday, March 10th, beginning at 5:30 PM with the open session. Open session will immediately followed by the board members going into closed session. The open session will resume at 6:30 PM. This meeting will be located at the Administrative Building in the boardroom, 5608 Boundary Avenue, Rock Hall, Maryland. I have a question, and I'm just throwing this out literally, by the seat of my pants. The last 2 meetings we've had, we haven't had enough time in closed session. So, do we want to do closed session at 5 o'clock? I'm only saying that because for people that have jobs, and it's a difficult thing, but to your point, and I agree with you, we have been rushed to so much that the last time, we had to go back into closed session. So, just a point of conversation before I ask for a motion is, how does anybody feel? Are you comfortable just starting at 5:30 with an hour for closed session and then coming back out into open, or do you feel like you need an extra half hour?
I think I would say I need more time, but I think a lot of it is based on work. Like, today I actually took off to get here on time. Actually 2 hours, so I make sure I was ready, because I knew she was gonna hurt my mind with the numbers. But I still personally feel like I need more time in closed session.
What does, I just throw that out, that's all. I mean, Dr. McComas and I didn't talk about it or anything like that. I was just thinking about the conversation we had in closed session.
Let's go one at a time.
That's what I was wondering,
Yeah.
if it had to be a set rule about it, or if we could just
No, I'm
say,
talking about
you know,
next,
next
I'm just
time.
talking about our March 10th meeting.
Yeah.
That's all,
Having the budget and everything.
yeah, I'm only talking about the March 10th meeting,
What's
whether
this?
you want to start at 5 o'clock,
Yeah.
okay?
Fine with that.
I would-
Dr.
yeah, I'd
McComas,
be
how do you
open
feel
to
about that?
That- I'm
All righty,
fine.
so I'm
I'm
looking.
here anyway.
I'm looking for a motion do I actually have to have a motion that we're going to start at 5, or we'll just make that known when we publicize our next meeting? Okay, that'd be awesome. So all I really need is a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any conversation? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you,
The motion was
everybody.
by Frank and, motion by Aretha, and he seconded.
All righty. The vote was 5-0, and